So yeah, as you can see, he's getting through that pretty easily. Uh, Not that won't be around for much longer. He just gnaws straight through. Doesn't matter, bones, muscle, fat, etc. He just chomps straight through whatever it is. That's frozen like rock solid. Um, but he doesn't bat an eye. Frankly, in my opinion, I'd rather feed him strictly a frozen diet, especially frozen raw diet, because it does a number to keeping his teeth in good condition, his mouth and jaw in good condition. I never brush my dog's teeth to get them dental cleanings, especially under anesthetic. But they always have perfect teeth and mouth. They never have bad breath or anything, but that's because, like I said, their mouth is kept in really good condition by the opportunity of chewing on effective chews on a regular basis. And I've found that the most effective method would be frozen food like this, where they have to actually work to get their food off of the hunk of meat. I find that this is just has endless benefits and works really, really well. So this is why I tend to, as I say, feed my guys frozen. As long as they're not exposed to the environment or the elements, it's largely fine to feed them frozen. Especially in the summer, they love it. It's like having a popsicle or ice cream for us. And it really helps cool them off, especially when they're really overheating. But if they're in danger from not being able to maintain their body temperature, then obviously this isn't a good thing to do unless you can adequately secure their body temperature in other measures. That might mean putting a coat on or keeping them indoors in a heated area or whatever. But it's just still the best way to do things. If I had the choice about it, under ideal circumstances, I would feed him all frozen, raw-based diet. He's infinitely more satisfied by this than a bowl of kibble. The relative volume of a bowl of kibble compared to the same amount of, like, meaty bones is just, it's not even worth considering. Like, you're lucky if you get, like, 10% of the total volume you'd get from a raw meal in a bowl of kibble. It's so bad that this guy actually gets personally offended when you try to give him as his main meal dry kibble. He feels like it's just too pitiful and small an amount that it's not. He's not happy. He'll eat it. I mean, he's never going to turn food down, assuming he understands it to be actually food. A lot of stuff that's called dog food, he doesn't understand that it's meant to be eaten. It's so foreign to him from what is real food that it doesn't even begin to cross his mind to even actually try to eat it. One thing to be aware of is in some birds there's plastic. I removed all of the potential plastic prior to giving him the turkey, because I didn't want to make it look like I recommended giving the dog it with plastic intact. I didn't want to set any bad examples, but if you know your dog doesn't eat food objects and they're supervised, doesn't eat non-food objects and are supervised, then often it's not a big deal. My guy will never eat plastic. He will literally pull every last little scrap of plastic he can that exists and spit it out. I've literally watched him sit there and like chew on a bite of food, like nom nom nom, and you can see him kind of working something out in his head. And the next thing you know, he kind of just like spits out a little piece of plastic, takes a couple more bites and swallows. Like, okay, that's just food. You know, he just automatically knows what is food and what isn't. But not all dogs are like that, and either way, I'm supervising. Either way, it's best to take any plastic items off. In terms of turkeys and frozen birds, you'll frequently find a plastic tab around the legs that is holding the bird kind of like together. In addition to the plastic cover that's on the exterior. Many birds, you can buy them without this, but assuming you want the animal as well, you can basically buy ones with that, then take some boiling water and pour it in the center of the bird until you melt the inner plastic bag that's inside with the gizzards and shit. And then you can pull that out, pour that back into the, either feed it to the dog raw then, or you can pour it back into the bird and put it in the freezer for a bunch, frozen solid. If you've done defrost like that, I like to leave it a month, because that way I know I've killed off pretty much anything that could have survived the heating process. But it's not really a great technique. So if you, it's innards from birds are cheap. I'd rather just buy the innards separately, especially if I have a dog who has a tendency towards swallowing non-food objects. In Benny's case, he's just hilarious. We will systematically work the baggie of innards out of the turkey, and he'll work his way through the turkey or bird until he gets to that bag. He'll pull it out, finish his bird, and when he's finally done, he'll have had the defrosted innards in the bag, and he'll tear that open and lick the inside of that until he's got every last drop of that, and then he'll leave the bag and any other thing that's not food, and lie there happily enjoying his plump stomach. So, again, you really have to just be aware of your animal and always supervise. You never know, crazy things can happen. Like, for example, some dogs get a little too excited and overeager at the idea, and so they take a huge bite and get it stuck on their mouth, and they can kind of freak out if this is their first time, or especially if it's their first time having anything slightly stressful happen while eating. They'll probably freak out quite a bit, and if you're not there to kind of just calm them down and go, hey, okay, take a breath, and help them and show them that everything is fine, and nothing to be stressed about, you can end up with a lot of mess to clean up from the bird that's been bashed around your home on every surface, and you could very seriously end up with an injured animal. So feeding time should always be supervised. That's my policy. All my animals are supervised while they eat. I also don't want to encourage a mentality of isolation while they're eating. They should be fully willing to accept the presence of people around while they eat without being concerned that somebody is going to interfere with their food, or they're going to have to defend themselves or their food. That anything a person does is just, likely to get them a better treat, and they get to keep their food. I like to do deliberate exercises and training with the dog to get them to be comfortable with being handled while they eat, and not be frightened or overwhelmed or stressed by that. But overall, I try to let my dogs just be peaceful and relaxed and enjoy their meal. I try not to make their life miserable while they're eating. Wouldn't want somebody to be annoying me while I'm eating, so figure fair is fair. So generally overall, I just let them do their thing and eat their food. And if for whatever reason I need to deal with something in regards to their eating or their food, well, they have their special treats or whatever. I always basically I trade. So if I want them to give me their hunk of meat, I'll give them a chicken foot or something in exchange. And while I'm handing them and distracting them with the food, I can intercede in whatever food issues. That's, of course, assuming the dog has any issue or some concern with a dog like Benny, who I've worked with for quite some time, and I know isn't going to freak out just because somebody's happens to move around their food. So I'm not worried about him. Like, I know I could just move there and he's just gonna go, but okay, what you doing? I'm watching you because, maybe something interesting happened, but I'm just gonna keep eating because I've got my food. I don't have to worry. Like, I really discourage the concepts of a dog having to have to be concerned about another dog in the household, taking their food, or bullying them when they're eating, or making their life unpleasant. I'd rather feed animals entirely separately than tolerate that kind of behavior from any of the animals in my household. Yeah, you're a good boy. There has been some instances where dogs have actually bloated and developed GDV and ended up dying as a result of stress during feeding. So realistically, we want to keep this as low-key a endeavor as possible. So while I will do training and desensitization work from day one, I still really focus on keeping it 100% positive and with the least amount of stress I can provide them. As you can see, he basically just grates straight through that like it was nothing. And frankly, by the end of it, it's just mush. Like, in his stomach, there is no piece that's larger than like a couple of millimeter cubed. Like, he just mashes that and crushes it into oblivion. I'm so amazed with the power of his mouth and jaws. Like, this is frozen rock solid. Like, you hear him crunching through that. You can see the cold pouring off of the meat. So, like, it's pretty clear. Like, that's just rock solid, and he doesn't care. He's just crunching straight through it. As happy as can be. And this is pretty much the ideal set of circumstances during a feeding. Just an easygoing, happy, pleasant time where they get to enjoy something pleasant that's going to make them happy and that will satisfy a lot of their very instinctual urges. In the case of Benny, and dogs like Benny, where he already has quite a busy day and plenty of real work to do, I try to combine as many different things into a singular inactivity as possible so that I get the most advantage from every bit of time I can spend and work I do and etc. So, in light of that, so I try to get him to get his hunting drive out by hunting and finding the prey item. And then once he finds it, then he has to chase it down and tear it off the rope and wrestle for it, and then eventually bring it to his mat and lie down and chew through it as hard as he can and work through until he finally is finished grinding up every last little bit, and then getting to lay around and just lazily enjoy having a full stomach and a satisfied brain. But when you're talking about a pet who is bored out of their tree and typically so lacking in stuff to do as a general activities that they start making up their own games. That's actually what the whole barking at the mailman is all about, usually. It usually goes to, hey, I see this person coming, I bark, it seems scary, and they go away. I won. And so they start creating, like, games with themselves like that, or, you know, destroying whatever, or annoying their litter mates, or other household members, or whatever. So, like, it's just one of those things that a bored dog is not going to be happy or satisfied. However, it's not hard to give them stuff to do and to fill their time to make it more satisfying. So that could mean, say, hiding a small lunch cooler with a bunch of ice packs in it surrounding a small piece of meat in a bunch of places throughout the house. And then the dog has to find the cooler, open it, and dig out the hunk of meat to satisfy their dietary needs, while also giving them something to do when you're not home because you're at work and they're just home alone, bored, and needing to be kept occupied so they don't look at the furniture like, that might be something that's interesting to taste and see if I can chew on. I wonder what that tastes like, sort of thing. So, yeah. By giving them opportunities to be active throughout the day while you're gone, and to have a bit of an existence even though you're not there, it's much, much more likely the dog will be content and satisfied and be a happy, functional member of your family for many years to come. But again, it all depends on the dog. If the dog isn't really good with feeding in such a way that you can do this when you're not supervising, it's one thing. But if they're not okay with these things, then obviously you shouldn't take those kind of risks. So that could mean maybe you stick with a Kong, and freezing some Kongs, or whatever. But whatever you choose to do, however you choose to go about it, it's important to make sure that you're meeting the needs of these animals, because they're sentient, intelligent, very self-aware, living creatures that deserve respect and who have needs, and those needs need to be met. It's not fair to keep them in an environment where they don't get those needs met, and they are forced to try to scratch out some kind of basic existence, despite being totally outside of any reasonable element. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day. He's finished this off now, so I'll end the video now. Take care, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them in the comments.